fly away, fly away.
Hello, and welcome to the Learn to Hunt series, Turkey Tuesday edition. My name is Casey Harriet. I'm the R3 coordinator for the state of Oklahoma and National Wild Turkey Federation. And essentially, R3 stands for Recruitment, Retention, and Reactivation. R3 coordinator basically says I help to create programs and initiatives to get people outside of hunting, and one of those initiatives are these Learn to Hunt series like this. So before we go into this Turkey Tuesday series and how it looks a little different here, I'm going to introduce both of our speakers here that are helping me out today, and then we'll talk a little bit of why it looks different, and then we'll just hit right into the habitat and biology portion of this Turkey Tuesday. So, Jacob, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Jacob Harriet. I'm the state game warden assigned to Lincoln County.
My name is Jacob Tyson. I'm the other R3 fishing coordinator for the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation.
Yeah, and I'm specifically the hunting R3 coordinator, if that got confusing. Okay, so the reason why this looks a little different is we have a really cool podcast, pod lab. What are we calling this?
Yeah, this is like the pod lab.
Yeah, set up now, and so it looks a little bit more professional. They've been working on this. ODWC has been working on this for a long time, so we're shooting these at headquarters now. So we want to kind of up our production and make these a little bit cleaner and crisper and more professional. So here we are on YouTube. So if you guys have any questions as we go along today, please type them in the chat box, and we will have experts fielding these answers as we go. So very similar to the Learn to Hunt Zoom classes we used to do, but just a tiny little bit different of a format. And we're going to be more discussion style. We'll have some visual aid, but this is just a little different than what we've done in the past. But without further ado, I think we're going to start talking about some wild turkeys here.
Let's get into it. Here
Okay, so I'm going to go over a little bit. There's two different species of wild turkeys. There is the American wild turkey, and then there is the ocellated. I always want to confuse that with Osceola. There's ocellated that is down in Mexico. Today we're going to talk about the subspecies, the 5 subspecies of wild turkeys, specifically the 3 that are here in Oklahoma. So what you see there is the eastern wild turkey. And I want to talk, you can see in that range, that circle right there, it's kind of a purplish range. That is where these turkeys occur. And to talk a little bit about the differences in how they look. Eastern turkeys have a little bit of a coppery bronze iridescence to their body. If you look at those tail fans, they're a lot darker than the Rios and the Merriams that we're going to be talking about. The Easterns have more of a chocolatey bronze brown to them, and the Rios that we'll talk about in a little bit is going to be a little bit lighter. A couple different like behavioral characteristic differences and habitat differences are Easterns like trees. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yeah, they're more kind of a woodland, piney tree forest type stuff, where your Rios are more of an open kind of grassland.
For sure.
If you notice in Oklahoma down there, we have those Weyerhaeuser lands, those pine tree forests and stuff on the eastern side of Oklahoma, and that's where they naturally like to hang out. As far as behaviors go, I like to joke and I call them forest ninjas. And the reason is I hadn't hunted Easterns before. I'd only hunted Rios, and we'll talk a little bit about Rios in a second. But Rios are really loud and let you know when they're coming. And Easterns are not like that. They kind of sneak up on you. I mean, some of them will holler too, but in the case of my public land bird I got to harvest, it just showed up. We didn't hear it coming.
Came out of nowhere.
It came out of nowhere, and I thought my eyes weren't seeing what they were seeing because I was like, they should announce themselves. But
Right. They're almost like ghosts of the forest.
Forest ninjas, exactly. Right. So I joke about that, but anybody that's seen a couple of these Turkey Tuesdays, they'll laugh because they know I call them forest ninjas. But essentially, that's the eastern subspecies of wild turkey. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about Merriams. Merriams I'm not super familiar with, because if you look at that range map there, look at that tiny little northwest corner of Cimarron County. That is where these guys occur. There's no public land out on that area. I don't think that you can access them. So it would be private land most likely that you would have access to. So it's really, really hard to attain a Oklahoma Grand Slam. And when I say that, I mean like all 3 subspecies of turkeys being harvested. But the Merriams are really cool. That's a Jake right there, because you see the split in the tail fan. I don't think we have a slide on this. So when I say Jake, do you see how the tail fan is higher in the middle and broken up? It's not that beautifully clean circle. That is a immature male bird that is a jake. So his
and juvenile male.
juvenile, yes, couldn't think of that word. And their little beards are probably just like a little. What's the miniature? What's the length of one? It's supposed to be like 2 inches or less or something.
2, 3, 4 inches.
Yeah, constitutes
They're
a
quite
jake.
a bit smaller. That's the first beard that turkey's going to have.
Yeah, and it doesn't hang down. It kind of just like sticks out. I'm trying to show. But yeah, that's how you can tell a juvenile turkey or a jake. And so the difference on those is these birds have, if we're talking physical differences, these birds have white tail tips. You can see how that eastern was a lot darker bronze. Exactly. And then you can see that Merriam is bright white, and they have kind of an actual purplish tinge or iridescence to their body too. It makes them a little different. So we just kind of, the big things are talking about the tail fan color and like the iridescent sheen of their body.
And if you think about the colors on it, your eastern is a woodland bird.
Makes more
sense.
sense.
They're more shaded, more dark. So they're going to be a darker bird, where your Merriams are more of a grassland, kind of open savanna type bird. So they're going to be lighter and blended better with that grass. So they're just more adapted to their environment.
Exactly.
So I'm going to go ahead and ask this question here. The split in the tail feathers that you were talking about, does that qualify for every subspecies? Like for the jakes compared to a tom?
Yeah, it's just an age thing. It's just the immature or juvenile male bird.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that's kind of a fun fact. That's how, if you can tell, if you're hunting far away and you're trying to pick your bird out, if you see that split in the fan and you're trying for a mature bird, you'll know that is a jake. You don't even have to see their beard length to know that's a young male bird.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Lots of times in hunting situations, they just come over a hill and all you can see is their head and that back tail fan. And that's a for sure way to say, okay, that's a juvenile or a mature bird.
Yeah, essentially they have to turn broadside for you to see that beard a lot of times, so you'll know. Okay, so we're going to talk about the most densely populated bird here in Oklahoma, and that is the Rio Grande. And this guy is basically everywhere besides the eastern part of Oklahoma. This is the one that you'll hunt here in Oklahoma City area, and basically the most of the Oklahoma. So the differences in these birds are, you'll see the long legs. They have a little bit longer. They're a little taller frame so far.
We're going to go back to that.
Yeah, we'll go back to that. And I'm going to guess that's just because the longer legs are good for the terrain too, maybe. If you even think about a bird and the differences, they usually, like Jacob said, kind of correspond to the area they're accustomed to. But the other physiological, or the differences physically, are they have kind of an iridescent green sheen to them. So we've had the bronzy sheen, we've had the purple sheen with the Merriams, and then when this is a more green sheen. And then their fan is kind of similar to the Easterns, but they have a little tanner tail tip. So they're buff and tan, as opposed to like bronzy chocolate tan of the Eastern one. These guys are loud, and they will tell you these are probably one of the easiest as far as the 3 species of birds to hunt here, subspecies of birds to hunt here. These are the easiest to hunt, and
depending on the bird in general. Yeah.
Yes.
Sometimes there's differences in each species, but for the most part, the Rios are more vocal. They're out in the open. They're not going to have to go walk through the thick woods to find them. They're just a little more apparent, a little more vocal.
Yeah, you can see them from a long ways away and hear them from a long ways away, just from the topography differences between that and the hilly southeast Oklahoma.
Sound will definitely carry a lot further than it will.
Yeah,
absolutely. And going back to that map, Jacob, so if you notice there's pretty hard lines where those turkey populations divide. There's a white slit in the middle, and basically that's an area where there's hybrid birds. So all these turkey species can breed with each other. So there's hybrids of each. So we have our Easterns. We have a little strip where it's very common to see a hybrid, and then the Rios. But, those birds can kind of go from place to place. That's not, okay, this line stops, this eastern bird can't cross here. It's a very loose boundary on that.
And they can interbreed. So, and a lot of times if you get one of those hybrids, you really won't be able to tell the difference between like which one it is, because they're actually pretty close in looks anyways.
Yep. And for regulations, it doesn't matter if it's a Merriam, a Rio, or an Eastern. You get one turkey for your hunting season. So in my opinion, you don't really have to tell the difference between which bird or what it is. You just need to be identified that it is a turkey, it's a male bird, and it's legal to harvest.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be an expert when you're going out hunting on identifying the 3 different species that we have.
Right. And then I'll just briefly we're talking about the 5 species. This is for Oklahoma specifically, but I will mention that there is an Osceola or a Florida turkey, and then there is a Gould's turkey, which is kind of like the desert turkey.
Yeah, very, very hot, dry climates.
Yeah, so like Arizona, New Mexico, et cetera. Okay, so that in a nutshell, that is our species identification, subspecies identification, and specifically here in Oklahoma. So now I kind of want to talk about, we talked about the biology side, but I want to know, like, can you line out what a day in the life of a turkey consists of, like from start to finish?
Yeah. So, I mean, turkeys do, no turkey's the same. So I'm going to give you some information here. It's not to say that every turkey's going to do that every day. It varies very much, but in general, in the morning, turkeys roost in large mature trees. So in the beginning, we'll talk about springtime in particular, because that's when we're hunting. Usually right before sunup, it's still kind of dark outside. Those birds are going to start gobbling during the springtime. It's their way of communicating. So they're going to kind of say, okay, I'm here, you're there. Where are the girls at? Where are we going? Just kind of the initial breakup, which is an awesome time to be in the woods.
Let me say, we're talking about spring behavior.
Yes,
right now.
yeah, this is our spring.
Which is very different than fall and summer and winter. So specifically spring hunting behavior, what you'll look for when you're out in
so
the
this
field.
is, if you guys are out hunting during this turkey season, this is what we're going to kind of look for. So those birds are going to be sitting on there. They're going to talk a lot, be very vocal. Well, as the sun starts going up, they're going to be scanning for predators, making sure they have a safe spot to touch the ground. So at a certain point, they're going to fly down. Now, I've seen some birds stay on the roost till 10:30 in the afternoon. Right. I've seen them come down when it's still dark. So that varies a lot. But they're going to come down. Once they come down, that they just, for whatever reason, it's almost like they're establishing their pecking order. They already know it. Some of those younger birds might want to shuffle around. So they're going to kind of mess with each other, communicate back and forth. The hens are going to come down. During the breeding season, they're going to start hunting those hens. And those hens usually know kind of where they want to go if there's birds around. If there's not a dominant gobbler around, those hens might be kind of actively seeking. They're sitting there and now they're wanting to find a dominant bird. So they've heard them from the roost. Now they're going to go. And sometimes they hit the ground running and they might travel a lot of distance, or they might just kind of be in the same area with that bird. But they've been sitting all night, so that their bellies are empty. So they're going to want to eat. So they're going to start foraging around, looking for insects, vegetation that is able for them to eat. And they're going to eat through most of the morning while, kind of doing their communications, looking for dominant birds and just their social aspect. After that, as it kind of gets later in the day, a lot of times those gobblers will have the initial hens off the roost. Well, now maybe those hens have gone off, or maybe even some of those hens are going to nest and they don't have any interest in it. So if they have a bunch of birds, they're going to be probably pretty complacent. But if they don't, they're going to start looking for other birds. So that mid-morning, kind of early afternoon is a great time to find a mature bird wandering, trying to find somewhere to go. This whole time, they're going to be foraging and pecking around and stuff. Midday, it starts getting a little bit warmer. They might kind of lay up under a shade tree and hang out. But basically, their whole day is going to consist of either, kind of laying down in an area, looking for a breeding mate, or feeding. They're going to do that all day long. And then as we start getting in the evening, they're gonna slow down. They're gonna start making their way back to the roost tree. Not to say that roost tree is going to be the same every single time. They can do that, or they could go find a different roost tree every time. But they're going to start making their way back. As it starts getting dark, they're going to start flying up in the trees, and they'll gobble their heads off until it gets pretty dark, and then the process repeats.
Wow, what an exciting day in the life of a turkey.
Oh, yeah.
In springtime specifically. Yep. And look, since we're talking about seasonally behavior, let's talk about like fall and winter and summer, kind of the differences in that, since we're just talking habitat and behavior.
Sure. I'll kind of start just kind of our time we're kind of pre-spring, still late winter. They've actually started to break up, but let's go back to January 1st. So January 1st, these birds, they're in their winter flock. So they're going to be very large groups of birds. They're going to all be kind of together, roosting in big community roost sites. When they split up during the day, they're going to kind of split up into their groups. The mature gobblers might spread out by themselves, and the females might spread out by themselves, and the jakes might be a little separate. They kind of have their own little groups, but they usually roost very close together in a community site. What we're seeing right now in the last couple of weeks is that those birds are starting to split up. So what that means is now with breeding season, they have that on their mind. Well, they don't want competition from their neighbors. So they have their pecking order sorted out. They're kind of determining their own areas. So those birds are actually splitting up into smaller groups. One gobbler is going to go off by himself. He might have a few hens, maybe a couple of jakes that are hanging around, but they're starting to get pretty competitive and kind of aggressive, and they're spreading out during the springtime. That's going to go all the way through. One thing to think of with that is those turkeys, the hens are going to have to start laying eggs pretty soon. It's pretty amazing that those turkeys will actually lay one egg a day, and they come back to the roost. So they'll lay an egg, go back to the roost, lay an egg, and they do that each day. By the end of that, when they're done laying eggs, they'll actually sit on that nest site day and night, and they try to sit there. They'll get up to feed, but for the most part, they're glued to that nest.
It's a very vulnerable time for a hen, huh?
It is a very dangerous time, and that's there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. But being a turkey sitting on the ground is a very dangerous place to be. Life's hard when you're delicious, so everything wants to eat them.
I think especially like you said when they're tied to the nest due
Yes,
to the eggs, compared
absolutely.
to if they didn't have something to sit there and protect,
Yep.
where they'd probably just be like, "Oh, all right, I'm out of
I'm
here."
out.
Yeah, they
Predator.
got to make that decision. If a coyote or a bobcat or something
Right.
comes knocking, they can either save themselves or save the eggs, or maybe lose both. So, very dangerous time for a hen turkey.
For sure.
But hopefully those hens are going to be successful. They're going to hatch out, and they're going to have these little bitty, tiny poults that are about the size of a ping pong ball. And now not only are they on the ground with those eggs, but now they have these little things that are running all over the place. They got to keep them alive as well. So those poults rely very heavily on insects. So they have to have insects to forage on. So their nesting habitat is usually pretty thick grasslands, maybe some down trees, some sort of cover where they can hide really well. Well, those little babies have to be able to feed now. So they need kind of more open, early successional habitat, very weedy areas with a lot of open ground where they can forage on insects. So it's very important to have both those habitats.
So you bring up habitat. Are you done with that part? I don't want to interrupt you, but you're kind of a habitat guru, and so I think it'd be cool to talk a little bit about ideal turkey habitat, especially if you are a landowner or you're leasing land from somebody, and they will allow you to do a little bit of habitat work. Like, what is the ideal, and what are a little bit of, just touch on a little bit, because I know you'll go off.
Yeah, don't get me started.
Don't get you
You're
started
asking
on
for a
your
lot.
soapbox here, but let's talk a little bit about what you can do to improve your habitat of your lease, your land, or ideal turkey habitat.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm going to chime in. I think predator control is probably one of the top
Yeah.
things you can do to improve your turkey habitat.
So predator control is huge, and that it kind of has two ways to look at it. You can look at probably what you're thinking of as like actively trapping predators. That can definitely help. I would say even more importantly than that is to manage your habitat to where it is more beneficial for the birds than it is for the predators. If you look at a lot of our landscapes now, they're very much suited to be good for predators.
Right.
And with the amount of predators we have, it's important to have good habitat out there. So like I said, they kind of need, we've talked about three main habitats. So they need good roost sites. So that's big mature trees where there's not a lot of understory, a lot of brush underneath it, where they can safely fly up and fly down and not get ate. If there's one really nice tree with 100,000 cedar trees around it, as soon as they hit the ground, a predator could be there and jump on them. So they really need open kind of runways almost to get in and get out of those trees. So if on your property, those are super easy to identify. After that, we talked about nesting habitat. So nesting habitat needs to be pretty thick, grasslands. Down trees are huge. If you cut some trees down or they naturally fall down in the windstorms, those turkeys can have kind of a backstop where they can hide in there. One thing that I've noticed a lot is that a lot of this really good nesting habitat is in very kind of narrow strips, say like a bar ditch along a road. Well, that's fine and dandy until you have 800,000 possums, raccoons, and coyotes. And it's pretty easy just to walk down one strip that's 20 feet around, So it's good to kind of have large areas of that or abnormal shapes, just so a predator can't work real hard. And that's what I talked about, making the landscape more beneficial to the turkey rather than the predator.
Right.
After that, like I said, those poults, they have to be able to get around. They have to eat bugs. So that's where our early successional habitat comes in. Controlled burning is huge. It gets rid of the thick thatch. A baby poult has a hard time getting around in thick grass. Our native grasses are bunch grasses, so they're actually little tunnels underneath it that they can get around, where our invasive grasses like Bermuda grass or fescue are very thick and dense, and those birds just, it's impossible. It's a desert for them. They can't get through it.
And that benefits more than just turkey. That benefits quail, pheasant, any ground bird.
Yeah, and small mammals too, rabbits, squirrels, and all that as well. They have to be able to travel. That thick sod-forming grass, like your fescue and your Bermuda, is basically like a shag carpet. And it's really good for crickets and snakes and cows, and that's about it. But wildlife, it doesn't have much value. And then also, those chicks have to have bugs to eat. So your early successional plants, like your forbs, ragweed, your sunflowers, mare's tail, all those are very attractive to insects. Insects feed on those. So it brings a lot of insects in. And they can get around underneath them. They provide a little bit of overhead protection, for birds like hawks and owls and stuff, any sort of aerial predators. But they have shade, they can get around, and they're not getting picked off from above. They're not weighing in the open. And then on top of that, those birds don't thermoregulate. So if they get wet, they have a hard time warming up, or if they get too hot even, it can be detrimental to them. So having that dry area where they can get underneath those grasses or get under some brush and kind of stay dry is very important. And those moms do a good job of trying to, if it's actually raining, but think about the dew.
I think of that classic photo that won like so many awards
Absolutely.
of the mother hen with her wings out, shearling like 20 little poults underneath her. It's a classic photo.
I like seeing little broods like that. But you think of, we talked about that sod forming grass. Think about when it dews and you try, and there's a heavy dew and you try to walk through that. Well, that's a death sentence for a little baby poult,
Yeah.
So having that native burnt area, or even a burnt area where there's no grass and it's just all early successional forbs. I mean, those are great areas. But the whole key to it is it has to be in relation to each other. So if there's really good bedding habitat or nesting habitat over here, and there's not any good early successional bugging ground for those poults, well, they're going to have a hard time getting from one place to the other. But if you have those kind of broken up in a very just kind of diverse ecosystem where there's little patches here, little patches there, that's when those birds are going to do really good. And it also makes it hard for predators to get them.
Also, you talk about controlled burning and stuff, and it's kind of a hot topic, pun intended, about like right now because of all the Oklahoma wildfires. But you told me one time, like I think either someone told you or you told me that turkeys won't even let it stop smoking the ground before they're over there scratching and kicking up stuff.
So I got to see that firsthand about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, I bet, yeah.
We did a control burn, and literally there was still fire burning through the field, and turkeys were in that blackened area already scratching.
They love fire.
And getting in there. So turkey, I mean, it's like a draw to them. That is a natural process. The part of Oklahoma I am burnt every 2 to 4 years historically. Now, without that burning, the habitat has got really, really bad. But by bringing that fire back out there, those birds still know, hey, that's a good, safe spot that we can go get a lot of food.
So keep that in mind if you had a wildfire near you. Silver lining.
The fires were tragic, but man, it did a lot of good for wildlife.
I think going back to you talking about the different environmental areas that you've got right next to each other is not only good for like a hen turkey raising her poults, but also the hunting of those
absolutely.
toms.
Yeah.
Having like a nice wood line or connected to an open area where they can go out and strut and try and attract hens.
It makes them patternable.
Right.
So if you just have one area that's all the exact same, say you got 100 areas, just woods or just a field, it's really hard to know where those birds are going. Yeah. But if you have a really good roost site and a really good food resource area, okay, well, those birds are going to be traveling from here to here. And for hunting strategy, that's huge.
Yeah, not getting too far into like the scouting and the setup. It is another way to do that. It's scoutable, it's predictable, but like you can preseason scout and or look at aerials. And I'll try not to like spoiler alert for the other one, but you can look at aerials to really see that type of topography and that type of structure of it and kind of base off of that if you're trying to hunt someplace real far away. I do want to talk, since we're talking about behavior and like the top toms and stuff, we did, NWTF and ODWC did put out some research just fairly recently that actually structured us or led us to move the dates back. And it was about the hierarchy of those boss toms, those top toms in the structure. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about it. And nationwide, we're seeing a bit of a decline in the turkey population. So there's been a lot of effort and a lot of resources put into trying to figure out why or what we can do. I mean, the turkeys were basically wiped out here at one point. We don't want that to happen again. So we're doing our best we can to kind of figure out why and best things to manage it. And what she's talking about, the season dates, that's one of our theories that we're testing. And it's not just the wildlife department in Oklahoma, but nationwide, different states are doing this. We pushed the season's dates back 2 weeks. I think it was 2 weeks, right? Yeah, roughly 2 weeks. And basically the thought process behind that is that in those 2 weeks where we were hunting before, where we were going out and harvesting toms, that was potentially causing birds not to get bred. The hens weren't getting bred. So now, ideally, those birds have 2 more weeks to get bred. The hens can go off and nest by themselves and are already bred rather than, some areas in my county, there might only be 2 or 3 mature gobblers. Mm-hmm. And if for whatever reason, somebody went in and one hunter shot one and a coyote got one of the toms, well, now there's no breeding birds around. And while those hens are finding more toms to be able to breed with, that's just time that we're not getting turkey eggs on the ground.
Because they will only breed with the most mature, and so from what I understand,
Well, yes and no.
they agreed that, and there's also, from what I understood, there's kind of a hierarchy that they kind of have to reestablish, like their pecking orders too in a group. And so, am I wrong on this? If the largest tom gets, or the boss tom gets harvested, they kind of have to reestablish their hierarchies before they start breeding again. A lot of times.
Yeah. So that's all true. We talked about those turkeys come off the roost and they kind of know the pecking order. Well, if that big bully tom or the boss tom gets shot right off the bat, well, now those gobblers might be more worried about fighting with each other to try to get on top than worrying about the hens.
Right. So those hens aren't getting bred.
Exactly. So the whole aspect of it is to maybe allow those hens to get bred and get more birds on the ground. Now that is very early stages. I think this is only the first or second year we've done it.
Second year.
So it's a theory. We don't know that as 100% true science, but we're doing what we can, and that's a very good hypothesis that we have that's going to be beneficial.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about all of Oklahoma, but we can just talk specifically about Lincoln County. We've seen, we saw a lot more numbers this year we saw a lot more babies last summer too.
Yeah.
It was.
And turkeys, all your prey species, their strategy is usually have a bunch of babies. And so turkeys, they breed one time a year. They have one nest a year that is successful normally. They can re-nest. If something happens to their nest, they can redo that. But that being said, a turkey can have 10 years of really bad years and the population go down. And then just a few good years, they can bounce that population back. So that population fluctuates a whole lot. So like I said, we're having a nationwide decline. It's not necessarily the end of the world. I mean, that's pretty natural for those birds to go down and then come up in population. But yeah, the last 3 years have been great.
Number-wise for
each
county.
year, we do brood surveys and stuff, and each year those numbers have got better and better the last 3 years. So in my part of the world, just from my own anecdotal evidence, looking around, the turkeys are doing very well.
Yeah, I like to think it's because of moving those season dates back a little bit and reducing down to a one tom limit. That was the other change that occurred too.
We changed that limit as well. Not a lot of people out there harvested 3 birds a year. I don't know that it made that big of a difference, and I don't know that the season dates did that much of a difference. But that's why we have really smart biologists doing all that research, so they can tell me, yes, it worked, or no, it didn't. And I can just sit back and enjoy the turkeys.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of, I just wanted to talk about that because that was kind of, that leads into a lot of it. I've been smiling a couple of times when we're talking because when you say they like to have a runway to come off the roost, I feel like we should always talk about a funny turkey story that's pertinent to this.
The vicious attacking turkey.
Yeah. So we were out in West Oklahoma.
Western Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. Yeah. Western, not Cimarron West, but... and I kind of turkey hunted a little bit, but I was still fairly new. And we got set up in a really good spot. I guess the year before that we set up in their actual roosting areas. We didn't know it, so they're roosting all above us. That's a whole other story. We could have just woke up and stuck our shotgun out of the tent, but we didn't. But this time we were sitting down. I was, strategic. This is my husband, by the way, if you don't know. We were strategically located, and Jacob's by me and just down a little bit. And we know where these turkeys are roosted. And so we're waiting for them to fly down off the roost and hopefully get a good shot off of it.
Yeah, it was a big creek bottom full of live oak. So
beautiful.
Beautiful area.
Ideal.
A creek right there. Lots of good area for those turkeys to come down and forage. And she just happened to sit in the runway.
So don't do what I did. But when you hear a giant flapping bird, it's loud, by the way. It sounds like a helicopter coming out. I might be exaggerating just a little bit, but it's loud.
If you've never heard it, you'd be surprised how loud they are coming off the roost.
Yeah. And so one was coming off the roost, and I'm not exaggerating, right? Flew right at me.
Yeah, I mean, it probably would have hit her if she hadn't have
panic shot.
Wasted the turkey load. And
missed the bird completely.
Unsuspecting live oak got some bird shot in it.
Yeah, when something's flying, what do? I don't really know what to do in that situation.
What
do you do?
You just shot at.
Yeah,
I shot at the bird that was.
It was self-defense, but it was
self-defense.
good self-defense.
I was very upset with myself because I felt like that was I blew it.
Turkeys all around. I mean, gobbling all up and down the creek channel. It's beautiful. Just ideal morning.
Yeah. So I'm pouting, and Jacob's like, well, I hear some turkeys.
Yeah, so get over your pity party. I'm going to go get a bird.
So I'm just sitting there mad, and he was like, I want to go see if I can go like barrel, like what army
bear
crawl,
crawl, yeah.
all to these birds over here. And so I'm sitting here just puffing and mad about it. And somehow it's your fault.
It's always the husband's fault.
You put me right in the runway.
Yeah, I got her too close to the birds.
Yeah.
You're just too good, Jacob.
I'm telling you, I had to, you know how hard it is to pay a turkey to attack your wife?
Right.
It's pretty difficult.
And so while I'm pouting, he goes and army crawls off. I hear what is like 10 minutes later, I hear a turkey gobbling kind of down the way. And I'm like, kind of rolling my eyes like, no, I'm not even going to try. Like I messed up so bad. And it gets closer and I'm like, what does it hurt to try? Like
What's the worst that can
second
happen?
time's a charm maybe. So I see like the trail is going to come down and Jacob's God knows where, I don't know. And I just start army crawling myself. Never done that before with a shotgun or anything. This was a lot of effort involved in this that I thought was just going to completely flub. And
If you're gonna do that, just make sure your safety's on.
yeah, and like
Safety rules
point
were
the gun in
followed.
a smart direction, not you. And then I was doing that, and you want to tell your point of view at the time?
Yeah, so basically the birds that she had self-defense shot at had flown up the hill, and it was a bunch of terraces, so the land was very curvy. Well, I could see on the terraces the tail tips of these turkeys. I could tell it's a mature bird. It was a full tail fan. So I'm belly crawling through the wide open, just over grazed grass, crawling up this hill.
It looks like a log.
Yeah, and these turkeys are kind of just one step ahead of me, and I'm trying to catch up without spooking them. And I'd get over one, they'd get over one. Well, as I'm getting pretty close, I hear another gobble behind me. I'm in a wide open field, and I'm kind of along the fence line. The fence, it was both sides were the property we could hunt, but I'm crawling up this fence line. Well, there's another bird behind me, and if I keep crawling, I'm going to spook that bird because he's coming out into the grazed pasture. So I just decided to lay there and just hope that my wife is going to try to get a shot. So I'm laying in a fence line looking like a log, and a very nice tom. The ones I was chasing kind of just got out of the way, and they kept going. And the one that was coming behind me was actually kind of coming right to me, but I was a giant guy just laying in a fence line, so it wasn't going to work out for me. But as that turkey come out, he's kind of gobbling, and he's kind of looking at me, seeing like, what is that thing up there?
And I'm seeing this turkey too, staring at something else.
And I don't know.
My decoy.
I don't know what she's doing, Well, all of a sudden I hear a gunshot, and that turkey doesn't move. And I thought, oh, great, camp is not going to be fun tonight. She missed 2 turkeys in one morning. But it didn't move.
It did move.
It didn't move because she made a perfect shot. And you don't normally a turkey will flop when you shoot it.
Right.
Thing didn't flop. It didn't move a muscle. And I see her get up and celebrate and all excited. And she got the bird. But I was scared to death she missed 2 in a row.
Yeah, I was jumping, hooping, hollering, and
With-
the birds
with
he was
safe gun
chasing.
practices.
Yes, the birds he was chasing. He army crawled over, just slowly like, we're
Yeah,
gonna
they're
leave.
like, this lady is nuts. We're
I
getting
just
out of
scared
here.
all the birds off that he was chasing. But it was my first like big mature tom.
Hey, you didn't get skunked. That's
No,
That's the
it all
thing.
worked out.
So, I mean, the moral of the story is if at first you don't succeed, try
Keep
again.
on trying. And even that creek bottom was full of turkeys, right? Every single one of those turkeys heard that initial gunshot and maybe even a little bit of a woman screaming. But
Crying.
those birds were still ready to breed. They're still doing turkey things, and all of those birds were still in play. So if something happens in your hunt and doesn't go the way you plan, and what I find with turkey hunting most of the time, it doesn't go the way you plan. So don't be scared to kind of adapt and adjust.
I see that in everything that I hunt. Like
Absolutely.
something always tends to go wrong, and then there's like the way of the woods just
Yeah.
has a different story for you that day.
Absolutely. Everybody's got a plan till you get punched in the face.
Right.
When that happens, just adapt and try some more.
Punched in the face by a turkey.
Yes.
Flying at you.
Flogged in the face.
Yeah, flogged. That kind of, made me, I laughed a couple times during your talk about like a day in the life, because you're talking about like after they get down, they start walking elsewhere and stuff. And that's when that turkey, he went and hung out at his initial little loafing area. And then he's like, all right, more ladies, let's go find more ladies. And so he walked right to this lady. Just
Yep.
kidding.
It all worked out.
Yeah,
But-
wrong decision that day. But
Yeah, you can hunt turkeys all day long. They don't. On springtime. It's a fun time. It's not like deer hunting, which is I mean, well, in the rut, I guess you can hunt all
You
day
can hunt all
long,
day long.
but yeah, it's a little bit more active. And honestly, turkey hunting, I kind of fell in love with because it's interactive. It seems like there's a lot more, talking back and forth and stuff. And they put on a beautiful show in the morning. So that was some of the most pretty hunting times I've had is when you see all these toms strutting in a field. Before we go, I did want to put up those other slides because I kind of forgot to talk about how we show the difference between, we talked about juvenile, like a Jake versus a Tom on the fan, but we do have a few more, we need like turkey ID, obviously, because you need to identify your target. You do not want to shoot a hen. So this right here, this is a Jake. This is a Jake that's not puffed up, fanning right now, but you can see his overall body is kind of thinner. You see that that little beard that we're talking about right there. It's just like a little tuft.
Yeah, little looks like the end of a brush almost.
Yeah, and if you look down at his spurs, they just are little nubs too. So, but that's not really something that you can really see from afar. Right. So a lot of times we count on those two identification factors: the fan ID and the beard length or lack thereof.
Yeah,
now
to talk on that just a little bit more. So for our hunting season, a Jake is 100% legal to harvest. So as long as you can tell there's a beard there, we have bearded and non-bearded birds is what we need for our harvest. A Jake's bearded, it's 100% legal. Now, a Jake is a bird that is not sexually mature. So they haven't been able to breed yet. So in the wildlife world, we would encourage harvesting a mature bird because they have already had their opportunity to breed, share their genetics and go on from there. And not saying a Jake can't breed, but they're just they're a young bird, they're like, think of it like a high school kid.
Not at the top of the pecking order.
Yes, exactly. Bottom of the barrel. Next year is going to be their year. This year is not.
Right.
So, 100% legal to harvest, but it's, we would rather see people harvest those mature birds. And a lot of hunters kind of take that on. It's more of a challenge to kill a mature bird than it is a Jake,
a little
just
smarter.
Something
They're
to think about.
Yeah.
And that being said, too, our hens can be bearded as well.
I was going to talk on that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So a hen that is bearded, like I said, it's a bearded or a non-bearded bird when we're hunting birds. That's legal. If you shoot a female bird that has a beard, 100% legal. You didn't do anything wrong. But just like I said with the Jakes, we encourage people to shoot those mature male birds. Those bearded hens will still lay eggs and still have babies. We want more turkeys, so those females are going to have the opportunity to have more babies. Or a Tom or a Jake, they're not laying any eggs. So.
Right.
For sure.
So let's go on to a gobbler there. We call that a Tom or a gobbler. As you can see, that beard is real long. Doesn't have to be super long, but like it's a mature, it hangs. And then that uniform fan right there, you don't see that break up in that fan. If you were to look at his spurs, they would be considerably longer and pointier. Anything else to add on that?
No, just the difference in those two pictures, this Tom is what you would call strutting, where that Jake was just his casual kind of walking around feathers. There's a significant size difference between a mature bird and a Jake. But if you just see one by itself, it's very hard to determine that. If you see them together, you're like, oh yeah, that one's way bigger. But just by themselves, it's not. And so that's like those feathers and the beard and stuff. We can kind of look at that and see. I would encourage people, if you're not sure, don't shoot. If you're not 100% sure, if all you want to do is shoot a bearded bird, you said, hey, I saw a beard, I don't know if it was a long one or a short one, it's a legal bird, by all means go for it. But, make sure, every year I have people that accidentally shoot a hen thinking it was a Tom or, vice versa, just because, I couldn't see the beard, but I could see their heads in the woods. So just make sure we're identifying our target before we squeeze the trigger.
There's another good slide on that. So hen is a lot more bland color-wise, neutral. They're smaller.
You don't have that bright red that you get from a Tom.
Exactly.
So we can kind of skim right past this to the heads of a hen and a gobbler because that's where I think people get in trouble, right?
Yep.
I've had many opportunities where I just saw the head. Remember the one? Yeah, never forget that one either. But yeah, so I did not shoot a hen. It was just not the gobbler we were looking for.
A Jake and not a Tom.
Yeah.
That was my fault too.
We won't go there. But the difference between it's the scouting, it's the field. What are you? The outfitter or whatever you want to call it, the guide. There we go. But the difference is you can visibly see the differences here between a hen and a gobbler, especially if a gobbler's strutting, they get real blue and red and they can make those colors vibrant. They're still more vibrant in general, but when they're really strutting and showing off, they they get real bright and pretty. So you can see they're pretty patriotic with that red, white, and blue there. And that hen is just more bland white color. So keep in mind, you can also see that, what are those called?
Wattles or whatever you call
Wattles,
it.
yeah. That one's a lot longer on the gobbler versus the hen. And another fun thing is, and Jacob showed me this, like if a bird's about to spook in the woods, it's hard to tell. I don't know how you can see it when you do see it, but that little wattle, did I say it right?
I guess.
I don't
I'm
know.
not sure.
That thingy will start shrinking up. They can move it. And it starts shrinking up when they get all nervous and stuff.
When they're
and changes with their
relaxed, it's usually very loose and kind of long and stuff. They get spooked, it tightens up, makes them more aerodynamic when they're running away from you. But that's just my own observation. So don't take.
Yeah,
take
there may
with
not
what
be
you want.
science behind that, but it's.
But go back to that picture real quick.
There you go.
So I wanted to talk about this. Think about what these birds are trying to do this time of year. You know, those toms are trying to be very apparent, very loud, and attract hens. That's their goal. Well, you want to be big, bright, and beautiful, you know, to attract your mates. Well, what's the hen trying to do? She's trying to get bred and not get ate. So she's trying to lay her eggs. She's trying to hide in the bushes. So she's a very dull color, and those gobblers are very bright. And that's just all how they survive. That's part of their survivability is, you know, being more camouflaged. You know, a big gobbler that's out there in the middle of the field, he's pretty easy to eat if something really wants to, or harvest as a hunter. But those hens that are a little more quiet, they're kind of slipping around, they're hiding in the grass, sitting on their eggs. They want to be more camouflaged.
Correct.
And that's true for a lot of species, not just turkeys.
I think that's our last slide
That one
on that
definitely
one.
is.
Oh wait, just there's a very good photo of like a mature gobbler's like beard. Just a side view. I was glad we had that Merriam earlier. That was a Jake puffed up because those. If you saw that out there, you're like, oh, that's impressive. That's a big old bird. It's strutting. You may not know that that's a juvenile.
Yeah. And go ahead,
Let's
Jake.
go back to this one for just a sec, just so that
Yeah,
we
that's
can
the
kind
one.
of get a side-by-side comparison.
So those middle tail feathers would just be tall, and those other ones that haven't grown long enough to match that, where a mature bird's going to be a fully feathered out.
And like Casey said, from that front view, you can't really see the beard.
Yep.
So you've got to
Hard.
look for those other signs that kind of give it away.
Yeah, black beard on black feathers, and all a beard is feathers, you know. So it
Right.
on looking at them head on, they blend in those feathers very well. So it's hard to tell.
But we can't stress enough, like identify before you shoot, identify your target every time. And if that takes a little bit of brushing up before you guys head out in the field, then do so because you definitely don't want to shoot those mama birds. Those are the ones that, you know, put more babies out there. So
Absolutely, and I'm the game warden. I got to touch on this because I see it a lot. Safety wise, ID that target. While we're out turkey hunting, what are we trying to do? We're trying to look and sound like a turkey. Make sure that what you're shooting at is not another hunter, his decoys. Make sure 100% that bird is what I'm after. It's a mature or, you know, it's a legal bearded bird. And that's what we're going to harvest.
and we'll probably say this every class,
Yes.
but do not wear red, white, and blue. Do not be patriotic out there because you will look like a turkey.
Or black. Don't look like a turkey.
Yes.
If you have decoys or you harvest a bird, it's a very good idea to put some sort of orange flagging on them. So another hunter
Yeah.
doesn't see a turkey walking through the woods. Well, he doesn't know it's on your back, you know. So just mark something that, you know, you're not.
Even
gonna
if
get
it's
shot.
on private land, it's still important. I mean, Jacob gets lots of trespassing calls if that's any.
For sure.
Oh man, if you're the only one hunting your property and that's what you truly believe, you're wrong. It's people are crazy. They will cut a fence. They'll drive. I've seen people drive through a fence. I had a guy cut a fence and put a food plot on another guy's land last year. So it is amazing what people will do to hunt. So,
Well, I think we wrapped this one up pretty quickly. So,
do you want me to finish the life cycle of a turkey throughout the year?
oh, did I interrupt you?
Oh yeah, about 30 minutes ago.
Do we
Sure.
really want to?
I mean, I just really want to talk about the times where they. No, I'm just kidding. You can go ahead.
That's the important part. So we talked about spring and summer. You know, they have those babies and whatnot. But then you going into the fall, they usually start getting into their winter flocks again. They get in those big winter flocks. All those birds are together, and then the cycle repeats. So we just didn't finish the last couple little
There you
segments.
go.
one
There's the
sentence.
full
Yeah.
life cycle of a
There you go.
turkey.
Now you know what they do the other 6 months.
I'm
out
sure
of the
they
year.
were. That was so riveting. I'm sure
Just
they really
dying.
needed
Hey,
that.
when we say we're giving them the year, we got to give them
Fair
the year,
enough. That
not-
was.
not
I did
half the
set you
year.
up for that.
She's the rabbit hole chaser.
Okay. Anyways, so we're going to wrap this up now. And I think we will see you next Tuesday to do our second in the series, Turkey Tuesday series. And it's going to be over gear setup and scouting. So Hope this was informative, and we would love to see you next week.
Yep. Ask any good questions you got. Just type them in.
Yeah.
See you later.
Thank you.